Welcome. Since our last episode, I've done so many projects. I've traveled, I built stuff, my pipes burst outside of my barn, we fixed that. I got a new cow, I made a bunch of videos for my programming course, and I celebrated, what's that holiday at the end of the year? So I only wrote down one thing I wanted to talk about today, but it is something I've wanted to talk about for a very long time, for a few months. That's a long time. So let's go. When I was 22 years old, I finished school and moved to New York City. This was for my first full-time job. By my second or third day working at this company, I realized what my schedule was. It was wake up at 7:30 a.m., commute from Brooklyn to Manhattan, and stay at the office until 7, 8, 9 p.m., and then do that again and again. And I realized that I would be doing this for a very long time. I was now part of corporate America. And I even wrote a song about this whole first job experience, my schedule, thinking, what have I done? What poor choices have I made to be in this situation? That song is called Brooklyn. I might link it in the notes here. I was officially working in corporate America, and if I didn't do something different, I would still be there in a similar position today, 9 years later. I'm 32. Here's what I did instead, though. And we might have to do a separate talk, a blog post, a drunken rant about why this change happened. That's a whole other thing. But here's what I did instead. Very simple, 3 things. I became discontent, I embraced suffering, and then I repeated that. Those 3 things. That's it. I repeated that. All 3 of these steps were necessary for my transformation, if you want to call it that, my improvement, my becoming who I am today. Just 1 or 2 of them is necessary but not sufficient. For example, if you're discontent with something, it doesn't have to be your job, but that's a big source of discontentment. It's 24 hours in a day, 8 hours of your job plus commute. It's more than 33% of your life. So it's a common source of discontentment. If you're just discontent, you're one of those miserable people who blows their brains out. If you just embrace suffering, you are a masochist, right? And if you even choose to do 2 of those things, you become discontent and you embrace some suffering and you get a good result, maybe a promotion, or you get to work from home, or whatever improvement looks like to you. If you don't repeat, then that's all that happens. You just taper off again. You just get to a new level at which you can become complacent, discontent, etc. So all 3 steps are necessary. I was lucky enough to do all 3 steps over and over again a few times. And I think that's the easiest way, the most cogent way to summarize my quote unquote career. Is becoming discontent, embracing suffering, repeat. And I'll put my career through the ringer right now to demonstrate that. So I was discontent in my first job. I quit. That was embracing suffering. I became poor. I really had no money. I had some stocks that I had to sell to pay rent that month. And then I got a new job, and that new job, paid more money. Then I became discontent at my second job. I quit and was lost. So here my suffering wasn't becoming instantly poor. At this point I had some savings. I could breathe for a couple months, right? And to make things better, I started a marketing agency. I then became discontent at my agency. I quit, embracing suffering, and I moved to a very crappy apartment in Chiang Mai, Thailand. It was $315 or $325 a month and included internet, air conditioning, everything. I guess it wasn't really that bad for what it was. And I lived there and I didn't speak to anyone. I didn't become friends with digital nomads. I didn't go do things people do in Thailand. I went to a cafe and just learned to code every day. So that was me embracing suffering. And then that got me a job in San Francisco at an investment fund. I then became discontent at my third big job, the investment fund. I quit to embrace suffering and went to work at another startup. That startup ended up being fraudulent, but that's another story for another time. So I started FOMO. Then, of course, 4.5, 5 years later, I became discontent running a profitable company. How does that work? How do you become discontent doing something that works, being your own boss? But I did. I quit and moved to Korea to do totally different things in entertainment. But the outcome of that was that we sold FOMO, and I moved to a ranch where I sit now making these retarded videos. Next, I became discontent at the ranch. No, I didn't. See, I'm no longer looking for a way out of my situation. I'm no longer looking for a solution to some problem. I no longer spot any obvious shortcomings to my lifestyle, the city I'm in, my circumstances. Everything is different now somehow, which makes me think that this 3-step loop process, discontentment, action, repeat, is just a means to the end. And the end for you, for me, will present itself, but you have to listen. You have to know how to listen. In other words, the title of today's episode, the real title, the secret, is finally being happy, or happiness is a choice. See you next time.